All right, we should be live. I'm just making sure that all my settings are correct. Just double checking everything. And most importantly, I'm trying to make sure that the website works. All right, let me make sure this works on the website and we are good to go. All right, so making sure all my tech is working. We have 1 minute left. Let me know if you're here. I want to make sure the chat is working. Oh, good. Hi, Kathy. Good to see you. So I'm going to turn on comments so I can see everybody. Looks like Kathy's here. Kathy, where are you watching? I see your comment. I just want to see if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on the website. Make sure my website is working. All right, so making sure all my tech is working. We have one. Reconnect the chat. Come on, chat. Let's see. I don't see that the chat is working, so let me know if you guys see that. Oh, there's Marianne. Okay, hi. Yay! Okay, good. Chat's working. Just double checking everything, guys, while we start. So it's noon now. Very excited about this, but I'm just checking all of my different channels to make sure everything's working. Okay, Kathy's here. I see her thumbs up. I see Marianne, so the chat's working. That's awesome. Very excited. Hit refresh if you don't see anything. Cool. All right, awesome. Yay! Okay, I've got it on my phone, just making sure I can see everybody. Awesome. Yay! This is so exciting. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, good. So Kathy's watching on YouTube. Let me know if you're watching on the website. I'm trying to make sure that's working. So that's my main concern at the moment, and we will start at any second. Cool. All right. So I'm just going to double check the website. It should be. It looks like it's working on my end. So let me know if it's not on your end. I don't see the chat box. That's the only thing I'm worried about. But the chat is working, so that's good. I see Marianne is here, which is awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this up real quick, and then we're going to get started. I don't like when these things go late. Okay, so awesome. All right, so what we're going over today is literally my step-by-step guide to planning any trip. I mean, really, it doesn't have to be a bucket list trip. It can be any trip. So that's what we're going over today is all these like really cool resources that are out there that you might not know about on how to like really strategically plan any trip. And then specifically, we're going to get into how I do it with getting points and miles. So I'm real excited about that. And I'm just going to like make sure, like I said, I want to make sure this chat is working. I see, okay, good. Oh, good. Okay, Nithi, you said everything's working great. That's awesome. I'm so excited. Yay! Because I've done this before and it did not work. So this is perfect. Okay, good. So I'm going to close all that down so I don't have to worry about it. So as long as the chat and the website are working, that's all I care about. Yay. Okay, good. Perfect. All right, awesome. So let's just get started then. Yay. Okay, cool. So Kathy, I'm also very excited that you are on YouTube. That's very great. Very great. Is that the right way to say it? Okay, cool. So let's get started. All right, I am going to just push play. All right, awesome. So obviously, if there's any tech problems, I've got my phone open. I can see the chat, and I would love to keep posted on anything like that. So let me know how it goes. And so we should just be live. So I'm Heather McKay, and we're going to get into that in a second. But basically, what we're going to go over today is how to plan your step-by-step, using my step-by-step system to plan any trip using points and miles, which is awesome. So these tactics, like I said a second ago, they'll work even if you don't want to use points and miles. They're like all these really cool things you can do that you might not even know about. Yeah, so let's just get right into it. So my name's Heather McKay. I'm a professional photographer. I've been doing that for almost 2 decades, which is crazy. And I also love to travel, which everyone says they love to travel, and I'm guilty of it myself in that I don't travel nearly as much as until I learned this system, I didn't travel very much. So we're going to get into my story in just a second, but I just want to let you know that if you want to follow me on social, then I'm most active on Facebook or Instagram, and I have 2 Instagram accounts. One is for the travel photos, and one is for my photography business. So one is A Parallax Life, and the other one is at McKay's Photo. So depending on what you're interested in, you can see that there. Oh, you can see my slide notes. I don't want that. Let me just change that. I just want Keynote to show. I'm just going to change that real quick, guys, because I want to keep you focused on the most important parts. So I'm just going to change this. There we go. Okay, let's try that again. I just want you to have full screen of my slides. Okay, so hopefully that works. All right, so anyway, if you have any questions, I definitely want your DMs on Instagram, or you can reach out to me over email, Facebook, whatever works for you. DMing on Instagram is always fun. Okay, cool. So hopefully this fixes when I touch the next slide. Hopefully you just see the presentation notes. Okay, cool. So anyway, I just want to give you the whole heads up. At the end of this workshop, we're going to get into like a lot of information, so definitely take notes. But at the end, I'm also going to show you this resource that I have available for you. And if you stick around to the very, very end, I have a very special treat for all of you. Okay, so just want to let you know about that. And before we begin, I want you to turn off your cell phone, put it on Do Not Disturb, just so those notifications quiet down, and then close your other tabs and stuff so that you don't have any distractions, which also helps your bandwidth on the internet, so that, this streams without problems. All right, so why I want to talk about points and miles specifically, even though I'm going to give you the step-by-step program on how I do any planning of any trip, but why I talk about points and miles is because only 31% of people are even redeeming what they've already accrued as far as points and miles and cashback. Cashback's easy, right? Like, we all love putting cash back. But seriously, like, only 31% of people are even using the rewards that they have. So my whole point of all of this is to get you familiar with the process, because most people tell me it's overwhelming. And I get it. I was overwhelmed too. I didn't know how it worked until I had to learn all about it. And I'll get into that in a second. But here's the deal. If you don't use your points and miles, then the banks are winning. Billions of dollars go unredeemed. And your bank is counting on that. So for me, I'm just like, why don't you use your points and miles? Even though I totally understand all the hesitations. A lot of people, and we'll get into that in a second, but a lot of people just don't know how to use them. They don't know what they're good for, and that kind of stuff. I totally get it. All right, awesome. So later on, I'm going to show you how you can get my cheap travel resource list for free. And I want to be clear, this resource list is like a labor of love. I keep finding all these great resources that help you travel for cheap, and most of them have nothing to do with points and miles. So it's a perfect companion to what I teach. So if you stay tuned to the end, you're going to get that resource. I'm going to show you how. So I just want to tell you to tell me a little about you real quick. I can see the chat here, which is awesome. So tell me in the chat, where would you go if money was no object? I find everyone has that bucket list place or that dream place, but they keep thinking like, oh, it's too expensive or whatever. So tell me where you would go if money was no object. Like if you just won the lottery tomorrow, where would you go? I want to know. Most people say like Ireland or Italy. I hear that one a lot. Kathy, what do you think? Nithy, anybody? Where's Marianne? I want to hear what you guys think. So tell me in the chat, where would you go if money was no object? So for me, mine was Africa, and we're going to get into that in a second. But I had traveled to Wales quite a bit. This is a picture of me in Newfoundland, which wasn't on my bucket list, but I had the opportunity to go this summer. And of course, I took it because I could. So for me, like Wales has a piece of my heart, and I'll go back there all the time. I love that place. All right, and then I also want you to tell me in the chat after you tell me what your like dream location is. I want to see like what kind of cards you already have, because even though the system I'm teaching in this webinar doesn't specifically, you're not tied to using reward points and cards. You can do this anyway, but I still want to know where you guys are all starting from. A lot of people have a cashback card that they like, so I just want to know what you've got. Okay, cool. Ooh, New Zealand. That's a great one. Yes, I want to go to New Zealand also, and definitely stay put or stay here because I'm gonna talk to you about how I'm helping my brother do his big trip to New Zealand this year. So I'm going to use that as a case study. In France and Italy. Oh, Kathy, you definitely have to do both of those. I loved France. France is one of those places. I went a million years ago when I graduated college, but it's one of those places. If I had couple $1 million, I would buy a house in the south of France, like for sure. Okay, cool. So Greece, Australia. Ooh, Bora Bora. That's fun. I love it. Oh, yeah, yeah. India. Oh, my gosh. Nithi, we need to do that together. That'd be so much fun. Oh, I love it. Okay, cool. These are all great examples, guys. All right, now tell me about your cards that you have. So we have, okay, Walmart, MasterCard. Got to get you to stop using those, Kathy, for sure. Go everywhere. Yeah, and so I'm glad you're here. I don't know who Anonymous8955 is. Maybe it booted you out. But yeah, that's the fun thing about my process is like, and I'm going to get into my story in a second, but it took me about 2 years to learn all of this stuff, the ins and outs. And then now I literally can travel anywhere I want because I can get a flight wherever I want. So this is the whole point. I'm so glad you're here. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Yay. All right, this is great. Okay, American airline card. Okay, that's pretty good. That's a good one. Okay, good. Yay. All right, I'm glad everybody's here. This is great. This makes it more fun for me when there's like people talking to me. So now I want to know in the chat, have you ever actually redeemed points and miles for a free flight? Because I want to know where you are in the journey. That's what I want to know now. You know, if you've ever done it or if you think it's too difficult, just anything you want to tell me about that. Ooh, the Redwoods. Oh, Sue, we can definitely get you there. That's easy. Oh, Capital One card. Yep. Okay, good. Oh my gosh. Debit? No. Yeah, that is bad, Sue. But we're going to get you, I'm going to outline why that's bad. Not just because of points and miles, but for a few other reasons. We're going to get into that in a second. But the Redwoods are very simple. I went to San Francisco for one of my mentoring clients. She had an art opening that I helped her kind of like get. So I went to her art opening because of points and miles. So that's an easy one. Redwoods. It's great. Okay, awesome. I love this. Okay, I'm going to keep going while you guys chime in. All right, and then I want to make sure that everybody here is fitting into, you know, what I think about what's going on with you. You probably prefer to pay cash or use your debit card so you don't get behind. That's a very common one. Everybody gets behind in college and then they're terrified of credit cards. Maybe you have a few dream destinations, but you think they're way too long flights and they're going to be way too expensive, right? Does that sound like you? All right, and maybe you've tried to earn points and miles before. I know I had. But I didn't know how to use them. I wasn't using them properly, that's for sure. Okay, cool. And maybe you have an everyday card that you like, which is what we just talked about. So I definitely want to know about that. All right, cool. So Nithi's a pro. She's using them for work and loves redeeming them for flights and hotels. That's awesome. And Kathy says that she's upgraded to first class a few times. That's fun. Cool. So the other thing I hear a lot is that either your spouse doesn't like to travel, especially fly. A lot of people are afraid of flying, which is fine. You can use points and miles for other things. And sometimes, or like maybe like me and you don't have a regular travel partner. That could be. It actually is a little easier because then you only need one free flight. But if you have a whole family, then you'd really want to get into this. Cool. All right, so you probably wish you could travel more, right? Without spending a ton of money. That's why I started. And that's what you're going to learn today. So, this is what we're going to go over. One of the things we're going to go over is why I switched from a debit card to a credit card. Like, literally, we're going to go through that. We're also going to get into the difference between points, miles, and cash back. And then that way I can just say points and you know it's points, miles. And then also, I'm going to this is the meat of it. I'm going to talk to you exactly how I planned my big dream trip, why I planned that trip, why I got into credit cards to pay for it, and how I found the points that I needed. And the last little tip at the end, I'm going to give you the easiest way to make sure your reward points don't expire. So I know that this is a problem for a lot of people. It was for me. I would get like 2,000 points and they weren't good for anything, and then they would expire and I'd have to start over. So I'm going to give you some tools, two big tools to give you so that you don't have to worry about that. Cool. All right, so before we dig in, I want to give you that full story, right? So some of you watching already know this story, but for me, it was that I wanted to go on this big dream trip to Africa. There's a picture of me over Victoria Falls, which is also a bucket list place for a lot of people. So I was getting really, really burned out. I'd been self-employed for over a decade. I'd been building my business. I built my business while I had a job for 5 years. And I was just starting to get burned out of like the hustle and bustle of running a wedding photography business. It's a very competitive industry. Maybe you can relate. I mean, I was just like working constantly, especially during all the nice months out of the year is what weddings are. Every night and weekend was taken. And I had like a really set routine working from my office. So I was kind of getting like tired of that. And it was very, very lonely, honestly. And so I wanted to take my big bucket list trip. And that was also spurred because I turned 40. So I turned 40 and I feel like I blinked. Like I still feel like I'm 25. I don't know if you feel that way too, but all of a sudden I'm like, how did I turn 40? So then I realized, man, I've been talking about going to Africa to visit my cousins for literally forever, probably since high school or earlier. And I even had told one of my cousins, I ran into him in Wales, they're from Zimbabwe, and I ran into him in '07 and I said, hey, just so you know, one day I'm coming to visit. So here it was all these years later, and I still had never made that trip a priority. So I gave myself 2 years to figure all this stuff out. I'd kind of heard about travel hacking. I gave myself 2 years to sort it out, and I just picked the date and put it on my calendar, which I highly recommend you just do that because then you'll stay committed to it. But that being said, I was still working way too much. I knew that if I could take time off work, I didn't have the money for the trip. So that's why I learned I needed the trip itself to be free. Because if I took the time off work and I had some of the money for the trip, I knew that 7 weeks off, I originally wanted 3 months off. So that was what really motivated me. But I knew that taking that much time off work, because I wanted to be off the grid. I was totally burned out on social media. I was totally burned out on all the things. So I knew that not marketing for all that time in my business was going to kill my business the year later. So I needed the trip to be free so that all the savings I had would support me when I got back. And that's pretty much what happened. I was right. So I learned how to do all of this stuff. And now what's so fun is I can just repeat it so easily. Like that's why I'm teaching it, because I wish I knew this so much earlier. So here's a picture of me in my first class flight. That was one of me like testing the waters. I got a first class flight to go to Singapore, so it was really fun. And so when I did finally go, I got my first trip to Africa for $82, which is amazing. And then I got free flights within Africa too, which is another little trick that I won't get into today, but it definitely is something to learn about. So what's really cool is I gave myself 2 years to plan that trip, and now because of this, I went on 5 more trips that year because I had too many reward point miles once I started learning how to do this and earning them. Isn't that nuts? I went on my dream trip and then I came back and like took a million more trips. And I've already been back to Africa again, which is so much fun. It's pretty crazy. So all I did was learn how to use my normal everyday spending strategically. I do have a bonus because I'm a business and I can do a lot more with the business, but maybe you have a family. Well, that's very expensive. I don't have kids to spend money on. So either way, or with a partner, there's different ways that you can do it. But the point is learning how to do it strategically, which we're going to get into today after I show you how to plan the actual trip, like New Zealand. I'm going to show you how to break that down, and then I'm going to show you how to get the miles that you need. Cool. So now I totally feel free to travel whenever and wherever I want. So someone in the chat had already said they'd go anywhere, right? Everywhere and everywhere. And that is now my whole thing. So here's a picture of me and my dad. He was doing his, and I'll get into this later, but he finally did his big golf dream trip all around Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and I was able to go with him. And the funny thing is, which I will also get into later, is that him and my mom went in economy, and I went first class. And this is because they were not listening to me and all my ranting about this stuff. So we'll get into that later. But first, I want to just introduce you to one of my brides and grooms. They kind of like really started this process of teaching my system. James and Laura, I met them right before I went to Singapore. They booked me for their wedding right before I went to Singapore, and then I was in Boston for a different wedding, and that's where they live. So I met them for some beers just to meet them in person and show them wedding albums in person. They'd already booked me. And so I was just, we're just chatting because we'd already, sealed the deal on working together. And I was just like mentioning, travel hacking and how I went to Singapore, and I didn't even really know this, but James like totally perked up, took all of my tips, went crazy learning all the stuff, just from a couple tips that I gave him, not even from a presentation this detailed. And they went around the world on their honeymoon in first class with hotels for 2 weeks. They originally were just going to go to like an all-inclusive, like everybody else does in the Caribbean. So if like literally like he's killed it, and I love it. So this is really, really fun. They're a good case study, and I keep joking that the students became the master in this situation. So today I'm going to show you how excited it is, how you can get your dream trip planned, first of all, and also paid for with points and miles. Does that sound good? Okay, so again, imagine having points and miles or cash back even for from everyday purchases for any trip you want to do. And again, you can just use it for cash back. You can literally just do that. It's not a good redemption, so I prefer you don't do it that way, but whatever floats your boat. So here's the deal. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why bother with credit cards instead of a debit card? Okay, this is huge, guys. So I started just like everybody else. I actually didn't have any credit cards in college. Like a lot of people got behind, and that's why they don't want to do them. But for me, I started with just like cash and paying for debit. I mean, when early on, I never made any money at any of my jobs. So, I just paid for things as I had the money, which is like a responsible thing to do. And then I decided, well, you know what? These credit cards I do have don't do anything for me, so I got a Discover card. At least I had cash back. And I think it was maybe I bought a computer or something, and I figured, well, the cash back on it will pay for the interest on the card or something. I don't even remember. But then now I'm all about travel cards, which is a much better way to go. So we're going to get into that right now. Okay, so the difference between points, miles, and cash back. Let's talk about that. Okay, because there's different things, and I know this is more of a terminology lesson. So here's a deal with credit cards. The reason that points and miles and cash back are totally different, and also credit cards. So credit cards versus cash or cash back or debit cards are important because of three major reasons. There's other reasons, but these are the three main reasons. One, you get trip protections. So every card is a little different. You do want to like figure out, if you need extra insurance, but a lot of the travel cards specifically come with trip delay protection, lost bag protection. So like if they lose your luggage and you have to go buy clothes and shampoo and stuff, your card will reimburse you for those expenses. So this stuff is really important. The other thing, and here's an example from my own life, not mine because I use travel cards, but for my brother's life, my brother, his wife, and their kid were going to come up here to visit my parents have a lake house near me, and they live in Texas. And their two friends were going to come on this trip. Well, what happened was 2 weeks before the trip, my brother blew out his back. And so everyone canceled that trip. But the problem was they paid with a debit card because they were doing the responsible thing and buying flights when they had the money for it. I get that. But if they just put those flights on a travel credit card, they would have been able to reuse all of that money. And their friends, their friends would have had to do it also, but they would have been able to reuse all that money because my brother blew out his back. But because they paid for it with like their debit card, they were basically SOL. They ended up getting like a voucher for half the cost that they had to use within a year, which is nuts. And then I don't know what the friends ended up doing, but either way, it's not a good way to do it. So even if you have the cash for it and you want to pay for it, worst case scenario, put it on a credit card and then use that cash to pay off that card so you have trip protection. Okay, so enough about that. Next thing is fraud protection. Like one thing I love, especially being a photographer, I make big purchases often. What I love is that Chase will actually text me while I'm making the purchase and say, hey, is this you? And I say yes or no, text it back, and it's either good to go or not. The other thing is I've had charges on my bill before, and like no questions asked, basically. They take off those charges. So fraud protection is huge. If you use a debit card instead, you are out that money forever until your bank figures it out. And it's just the long process. Plus all those like bounce check fees and all that stuff. You're out all that money. So using a credit card for your everyday purchases is better in this way in case you get hacked. Okay, so I know there's a photographer watching and other people with laptops and things like that. So here's the deal. Making big purchases with one of these credit cards, like with strategic credit cards, gives you extra warranties, actually. And sometimes they give you like a 90-day price match guarantee and all kinds of other stuff. So that stuff is really worth looking into just in general. Like take the travel stuff out and like think about that kind of stuff, okay? All right, awesome. So now let's get into the meat of why you're here, right? So we are here because we want to know all about how I plan my trip, okay? So if you want to plan a dream trip to, New Zealand, to India, wherever, then piece of cake, let's do it. Okay, cool. So first, obviously, is where do you want to go, right? So yes, there's 193 countries and you can go anywhere, but I find most people have 2 or 3 places they'd love to visit before they go. So let's figure that out. So what I'm going to walk you through right now is figuring out who flies there, where do they go through, and what's the layover. Those are the 4 things I want you to write down because when you do your research, these are the things I want you to pay attention to. Okay? All right, awesome. So this is something I never knew about. There's route maps. These are awesome. I mean, you see them in the sky or in the magazine when you fly, but you can actually look these up online and they're interactive, which is really, really fun. So you can see like where do you want to go, who flies there and from where you live, where are those layovers? Like for me, I live in Rochester. I hate having to go to Chicago to go east, or I hate having to go to New York to go west. Drives me bonkers. And that's a peril of living in a city like mine. But what's really fun is when you want to do these crazy international trips, I've started paying attention more to where those layovers are, and these route maps really help. So that's what I'm going to get into now, okay? So another place we're going to get into route maps again, but another place you can go, which I also didn't know, is that Wikipedia actually has a page for all airports. So if you have a local airport like I do, Rochester, or if I just want to see where Buffalo has to offer, which is nearby, you can actually go to Wikipedia's page on that airport and you can see where they fly, who's flying through that airport and where they're going. So this is really, really cool little tip I didn't know about. And then the easiest place to start is a place like Google Flights, because I've never found Google Flights personally to help me that much. I mean, you can find some cheap deals, but once you follow the breadcrumbs, I've never been actually able to book those. Other people have different success with it, but Google Flights is just, again, a great way to go as a catch-all to see, okay, to start paying attention. Well, where am I trying to go, and how is it going to route me, and what airlines? Okay, and I just call this recon. I like doing this recon. So let's get into these route maps, because these are my favorite things in the whole wide world now. So there's one world is like American Airlines and its partner airlines. And we're going to get into what partner airlines are in a second. But what's cool is you can see how it all connects together. So, and I'm going to show you why this matters in a minute when I talk about my trip to Africa, or my 2 trips to Africa. But I just want you to know that these route maps are out there and they're really fun and they're really interactive, which is really cool. So SkyTeam is Delta and its partners, and we're going to get into, again, I'm going to get into partners in a second. And then we have Star Alliance, which is United and its partners. Okay, so here we go. So Star Alliance is United, which I fly a lot because I have family in Texas, which is one of their hubs. Houston is a hub. But what's cool is that when I book using United points, I can actually fly on Lufthansa. You've probably noticed this before when you've booked a flight on your own, that it says operated by XYZ airline. That's because they're best friends. They're basically business besties, is what they are. So it's really fun to know what partner airlines are in like a bucket together. So Star Alliance is United Airlines, South African Airways, which to me is notable, Ethiopian, Lufthansa, Singapore Airlines, Air Canada, Air China, and more, right? So there's a lot of other ones. And you'll start to notice regional partners that are together. And then One World is American Airlines, British Airways, Cathay Pacific, Japan Airlines, Finnair, Qatar Airways, and more. Southwest and JetBlue are typically separate. Sometimes JetBlue will partner with people, but you really want to look those up on their own if you prefer those two airlines. They're great for like domestic flights. Okay, so this is why it matters, and this is kind of the meat of the presentation as far as stuff you might not really have thought through. So when I was first planning that first trip to Africa, I mean, I was really overwhelmed, right? It took me like months and months and months to like dive into all this stuff, which is why I love those route maps now so much. So what I found was that Delta was going from Atlanta to Johannesburg, and then Johannesburg was the hub, and I'd have to go from Johannesburg to wherever I was actually trying to go in Africa. So if I wanted to go to Cape Town, I'd have to go to Johannesburg. If I wanted to go to Harare, which is where I was trying to go, I'd have to go through Johannesburg. So that was kind of annoying. The other thing is I have clients near Atlanta, so at the time I was thinking, again, I was, worried about money on this trip. So I was thinking, well, wherever I go, I want to be able to make money before I go. So I could have potentially done some speaking gigs in Atlanta. I have some clients in Montgomery, Alabama, which would have they would have driven to Atlanta to do family pictures with me. So I did entertain this idea of flying Delta. The problem was I didn't have any Delta miles at the time. Now I have like too many. But at the time I didn't have any, and then that flight from Delta to Johannesburg is like 14 hours. So I was like, that needs to be first class if I'm doing that long of a flight, right? So then I was thinking about it, and I overcomplicate a lot of things in my life. So then I decided, well, I could do the same thing, but I could go to Boston. I drove to Boston. This is what I actually ended up doing for that trip. I drove to Boston. I think I rented a car so that I could just leave it there. And then I stayed with friends for a few days in Boston because I have friends and clients there too. And then I flew to Frankfurt, which on Lufthansa. And the reason I did that was because I was trying to be sneaky, and I got a 2-day layover in Frankfurt to visit some friends in Germany. They live like an hour away. And then I went to Johannesburg from there and did a photo safari. So that's what I actually ended up doing, except here's the funny thing. And what everyone, uses as a fear to hold you back from traveling is everyone's like, oh, aren't you worried about Ebola or all these, things in Africa? You're going to get sick, malaria, whatever. I ended up getting sick in Boston, and it took that 2-day layover out of my itinerary because I ended up having to move my flight. Another perk to using points was that it was no problem to move that flight. They didn't charge me. I just called and said I was sick and I couldn't get on the flight, and they put me on the next day's flight. So yet another reason to use reward points for booking your flights. So anyway, I ended up like not having that awesome layover to visit my friends in Germany, so I'll have to go back. But what I learned from that was what I did this past time. I just got back from Africa this past holiday season last year, December and January. I ended up driving to Toronto instead of Boston because it's closer. Then I took a direct flight to Addis Ababa, all the way over in Ethiopia. And then I went to Harare from there because I was tired of going through Johannesburg to get to Harare. So, and then it was fun. One of my cousins I'd never met was actually on that same flight from Addis Ababa to Harare. So we got to say, hey, we met in the airport, which was really fun. So that was pretty awesome. So this last time, that's what I did. And these are just different ways you can get there. And that's why you have to think about what do you want to do for yourself? Who's on the way? Because you can like take a look at that layover location, and you can visit that place too. And so I'm going to get into that in a second with a New Zealand example. Okay, so what you need to figure out, once you figure out where you want to go, you want to figure out, okay, how many miles do I need to get there from the airlines that go the way I want to go? So now I want you to tell me in the chat. Kathy's already answered this question, but have you ever been in first class? because it's the best thing in the whole wide world, and you'll never ever want to go back to economy once you do. So this is me in first class on that flight I was telling you about, where we went from Toronto to Manchester, England, for my dad's big golf trip. I was in first class, and my parents are back in steerage, which was amazing. So I got to sleep on that flight. They give you a DOP kit, like they give you pajamas sometimes. They give you moisturizer, a little toothbrush and toothpaste. Just all the things to freshen up, earplugs, eye mask, socks. Sometimes they give you slippers. I actually have a pair of American Airlines pajamas from when I went to Singapore. I just love being able to lay down, move around, get work done, whatever you want to do, plus food and drinks are, extra bonus. But it's just nice to have some space to move around again. So this is what's fun about having too many points and miles. All right, so this is where we start doing the deep research, right? So once I decided I wanted to fly on a United partner like Lufthansa, I had some United points, I had some Chase points, which I'm going to get into those two tactics in a second. But then you start looking at their availability calendars. So this is just a peek into just the United one. So you go into your United Mileage Plus account, you look up some dates, and you just kind of see. What I like about this with being self-employed is I can actually make my trip work for low points days, whereas a lot of other people can't do that, if you're stuck with like spring break or something. But, it's just nice to know what it's out there. So this is just showing me a one-way fare, one person with taxes and fees. That's what the dollar sign is. And this is going to show you like, okay, if I go on that Tuesday, it's only 40,000 miles each way, which is 80 round trip. That's easy to get. 80,000 United miles is very, very easy to get. But if I wanted to go closer to Christmas, that's at 21st, that Friday the 21st, that was me 100,000 points. And then it starts showing you what's not available. So that's part of the whole redemption tactic. Some airports have higher taxes and fees, and some airlines have higher taxes and fees. I'm not going to get into that today, but I just want to let you know that that's part of it. Yeah, totally. You got to do those international flights in first class, right? Yeah, it's so much fun. Okay, cool. So let's get back into these partner airlines because this is really important going forward. So again, One World is like American Airlines, British Airways, that kind of stuff. Those tend to have higher taxes and fees. Star Alliance is what I typically end up flying just because of where I live and that kind of stuff. United Airlines, Air Canada, Lufthansa, which I spelled wrong there, Swiss Air, South African Airways. So this is where it's like when you start picking out your destination, that's when you start paying attention to these kinds of things because the deal is with like South African Airways, that's easy for me because I could go to JFK, my brother's in Brooklyn, I could stay with him if I wanted to, and then I could go direct to South Africa or a lot of places in Africa on South African Airways. But the reason I'm getting into this, and let's go back to that first class example for just a second. Here's the deal. And, it's just this rabbit hole, but I want to give you a tip. We're going to get into credit cards in a second, but you want to have not all of your miles in one airline. And the reason for that is because of I'm going to go back to that first class flight for a second. So here's the deal. The reason I ended up in first class and my parents did not is because they did not listen to me. And if they're watching, sorry guys. Well, I'm going to throw you under the bus, but they kept racking up United miles, and I kept telling them not to do that. And I'm still yelling at them because now they want to try to go to Africa, and they want to fly first class, but they're still racking up United miles. You have to stop doing that. I'm going to rant about this, and I'm going to get into it more in detail in a minute, but the bigger thing is because my points were in Chase, which I can put into United if I want to, but I don't have to. That's the thing. So you want to have them in a general travel card, and I'm going to get into this deeper in a minute. But that because my parents had all their miles in United, they were stuck. They could have gone first class in an amazing first class, by the way, amazing. Singapore Airlines goes from Houston to Southern Africa. They could have, Manchester. This is our trip to Ireland and Wales and Scotland. They could have gone from Houston to Manchester, England in Singapore Airlines first class, which is amazing. They've never been in first class a day in their life for the same amount of points that they ended up doing going economy from Toronto to Manchester. Okay? You might think I froze there, but it's only because I'm still angry that they're not listening to me about this, right? So they keep So you want to mix it up, and I'm going to get into more on that in a minute, but I just wanted to remind you that's the key to doing first class. You want to have flexible points, not all in one airline. Okay? All right, so let's go on. Let's keep going. So, what else could you want for your trip? If you're going to go somewhere and want to rent a car, you need to plan for that. Do you want to get hotels paid for, or would you like cash back to use with Airbnb? Just, let's talk about different things like that. You can get, like I said, hotel points. You can do the same process after you get airline points for your flight. You can start over and do it with hotel points. That's how James and Laura ended up with so many hotel points, so that they got all the crazy upgrades on their honeymoon. You can do it with rental cars, and you can do rental cars and hotels with most of the different kinds of cards, like United Miles, they partner with Marriott and things like that, but that's not typically a good redemption policy. And we're not getting too much into redemption in this particular webinar because of time. But just so you know, you can still like book hotels and rental cars through whatever points and miles you do earn. But my favorite thing, obviously, is upgrading to first class. I feel like that's great for those long haul flights, especially when you're redeeming rewards. You can actually do it in one direction and not the other. So, for example, when I went to Toronto to Manchester, that's a red-eye flight overnight, and I'd rather sleep on that flight, but coming home, I don't really care because it's not a nighttime flight, and also I'm on the way home from a trip. I don't really care anymore. So you can upgrade one way and not another way. It's a little complicated. Sometimes they do it, but it's not too bad. But the other thing you can do is you can always use cash back to pay for it, again, if you're not stuck with just airline miles. So ending that rant for a second, put a pin in that. So let's get into how credit cards specifically help and how you can amp up and get all these miles you need to go anywhere. So for me, if you've met me before, you know it's all about the sign-up bonus. Okay, so what the hecko is a sign-up bonus? So a sign-up bonus is when you apply, and this is, guys, the perfect time of year to do this is right now, because you're about to get bombarded with Black Friday sales, Cyber Monday sales, all that holiday, going out drinking, partying, buying food at the grocery store. You're about to go through a spending spree, whether you like it or not, if you live in America, right? So this is the time to do this. So I'm super high five to all of you for being on this webinar. It's all about the sign up bonus. So literally, like when you apply for a brand new credit card and you spend a certain amount of money in the first 3 months of owning that credit card, they'll give you a sign up bonus in points or miles or cash back, right? So what's a good sign-up bonus? A good sign-up bonus is anywhere from 40,000 to over 100,000 points or miles. Don't get too stuck in how many miles it is, because some things look better than they are. Like Hilton will always give out like 125,000 or 150,000 Hilton points, but that's not always a great way to earn points. It's not apples to apples as far as like getting 80,000 Chase miles versus 100,000. But my point is, don't get anything that's 30,000 because you can find a better offer. And sometimes if you're not in a hurry, like me, I'll wait until I see a better offer. So 40,000 is pretty standard. 50,000 is okay. 60,000, 80,000, those are really good for most things. So that's a sign-up bonus. So let's get into that. So this is what a sign-up bonus is. So you'll see and I have credit card referral links for anybody who wants them. So let me know if you're interested after the webinar. So here's an example of a Delta Sky Miles card. So 40,000 bonus miles and a $50 statement credit. And this is where you want to read the fine print a little bit. I do screenshots because I know how to do that. Or you can write it down. But if you're going to apply for something, make sure you know what the details are so that you can really get all the points and miles. So here's one that's 40,000 bonus miles. They're Delta Sky Miles, and a $50 statement credit. So what that means is after spending only $1,000 in purchases on that new card, which is so easy to do, literally it's the easiest thing in the world. I mean, it's like gas and groceries and a couple restaurants, and you're good. That's $1,000 in 3 months, right? That's like $300 a month of just whatever. So you put that on the card in the first 3 months, and they'll give you 40,000 Delta miles. You can find a better offer. I think my referral link right now that I have is 60, so let me know if you want a Delta card. But anyway, the statement credit is where you need to read the fine print. Statement credit is after you make a Delta purchase with your new card. So that means if you buy a Delta flight, that would count. But one of my people in the travel hacking community that I've been helping, she had a Delta flight already booked. So I told her literally buy a cocktail or buy a snack on the flight, or pay for a checked bag if you want, but that would give you the $50 statement credit because she had a Delta flight coming up. So pay attention to that kind of stuff. And sometimes they'll give you more points if you spend even more. They'll give you anniversary points of owning the card, that kind of stuff. So that's just one example. Here's another one from Hilton. Again, I have referral links for all these guys, but you can earn like 80,000 Hilton points or more. Usually Hilton's 100,000 or more. Okay, so here's the difference between the cards and when you'd want to get each one. I think the perfect portfolio is to get all the cards, but maybe you're afraid of credit cards, and that's totally valid. But for me, it's all about having a generic travel card. Let me say that again. That is the number one step, the most important thing you can do, and the key to everything. Get a generic travel card. And I'm sorry, Sue, I actually have the Capital One Venture card also, but it's not a good card to have. So I don't have time to get into that, but there are better cards out there for travel. So here's the thing. The general travel cards are awesome because you can use those miles as cash back if you want, or you get more points if you book travel through their portal, their travel portal. If you book the flight through it, you get bonuses. So for example, I have this one awesome travel credit card that's a generic Chase travel credit card. And I was able to book my flight from Newark to San Francisco for half the amount of points that it normally would take. To me, that's awesome. And that card gives me lounge access in airports, which I'm addicted to, which I'll get into that in a minute too if you want. Plus, you can transfer them to any airline, which is why the Capital One's not as good. They've just changed it, but it's still not a great one. But anyway, I can take those, if I'm earning on a generic travel card, I can still transfer them to American Airlines. I still can transfer them to United Airlines. I still can transfer them to other partners that I already like. So this is why I kept yelling at my parents. They were like, well, we always fly United, so we want United miles. I'm like, but if you have all these generic points, you can still put them into your United account. That's my point. Okay, done ranting about that. The next step is to get an airline card. So this is why we are kind of backwards in the presentation as far as I showed you how to plan your trip first, and then I'm showing you what cards to get. But this is why. Because once I realized that United and all its partners were the routes that I could go to Africa, and I already fly United already anyway, I got a United card and I got the general travel card. I just planned my spending accordingly. I waited, I got the bonus points for one card, and then I went and applied for the next card. So this, and then what's cool about this is you can merge them. So that's the beauty of going first class. You could literally get a first class flight so soon if you have enough spending coming up. Get a travel card, get that bonus, get the airline card, get that bonus, and merge the damn points. So this is where it gets so fun, and this is how you can have like so many points. And then I get a hotel card because I now like having those in emergencies. So for example, when I went on my photo safari, I was able to get a Marriott, a brand new, beautiful Marriott right next to Johannesburg Airport on both ends of my trip, just to make it easy for myself for only 7,000 Marriott points, which is crazy low because it's Johannesburg. Nobody's trying to go there. Paris is a whole other story. Okay, so let's move on. So this is what I'm talking about. Is you can do, you can add the points together. It's what I was just talking about. So here's a screenshot example from my friend Chris that I'm going to get into in a minute. And the top one is how he had the $2,100 of flights, and he redeemed less than that in points, right? 175,000 points for $2,100. That's because of that bonus you get for using a general travel card. Here's an example of something really cool that I did recently. Sue, if you want to go to the Redwoods, here's a good idea. So I had a wedding in New Jersey, so I took advantage of that opportunity of having a direct flight from Newark because my car was already there. I was already going to be there for my wedding. So I took that opportunity and I flew to San Francisco, and I used points and miles to do it for like nothing. It was like less than 20,000 miles, I think I paid for that flight. I should have just probably paid for it because it was like $200. But you know, I just decided to use them because I had them. And then here's the key. It was a basic economy fare, which usually comes with no checked bag, no seat selection, all that jazz. But what I ended up doing was I did select seats for that flight. And I put that on my United card. So I booked it using my general travel card, and I put a little bit of a purchase on my travel card. That way I could get the perks of having the travel card, which I'm going to get into those perks in a second. But being able to check a bag is one of them. I'll give you that hint. Okay, cool. So here's some bonus tips for you, especially for Sue and a couple of the other ones watching. Nithy, this applies to you. Kathy, this applies to you. Hey, we all have small businesses, right? So if you have a small business, this is my favorite thing in the whole wide world. You can double dip. So I have a United card, United Airlines credit card for Heather McKay, and I have a United Airlines card for McKay's photography. And it doesn't affect my credit, which is amazing. So you can merge those miles, you can double dip. If you have a spouse, you can double dip with that person too. But my favorite thing is business cards, and a lot of people can get them. So I wouldn't necessarily do airlines and hotels with business cards personally if you're not, if you're, for general reasons. But for me, if you want a referral link to the best possible Chase business card, hands down, it's like the only one you really, really need. Super flexible points and miles, huge sign up bonus worth $800. Tell me in the chat and I'll make sure to send it to you. Yeah. Oh, good. I'm so glad. You didn't even know that general travel cards existed. Oh, that's awesome. Yes. Yay. I'm so glad you're getting something out of it. Okay, here's another bonus tip for you. Here's my 2 tips on how to not get your points to expire. Okay, so one way to get them to not expire. Well, first of all, I just want to say if you have a United account, they used to expire, and they just changed that. Delta points don't expire. I'm not familiar with all the programs out there, but generally speaking, usually they'll expire in a year if you don't use them or do something with the points. So the easiest thing you can do is you can just, if you have a credit card for Hilton, for example, or Marriott or whatever, and you don't want those points to expire, just put one cheap recurring bill like Netflix, which is like $9.99 a month. Have that automatically bill that card every single month, and that refreshes the date monthly. And then for that bill, if it's the only thing you're putting on there, just have it pay it off every month on the same day that is due. So that's an easy way to keep getting miles slowly, but more importantly, getting them to not expire. The other thing you can do, the other tip is to get the branded credit card. So if my United miles were still expiring, but I have a United credit card, that automatically makes it so my points don't expire. So those are the 2 tips. A lot of people don't know that. Okay, so let's recap what we went over, and then we're going to get into some more fun stuff. Okay, so you learned how you're leaving tons of money on the table by not redeeming your points and miles, and you're giving all that money to the bank, right? Plus all my other rants. You also learned why you should use a card instead of cash. And if you're worried about getting behind on that stuff while you get started, what I started doing was the day my, let's say, Netflix bill or Verizon phone bill was due, I would have that bill auto bill to the credit card, and I would auto pay the credit card that same day, that same amount of money. And that way, every day I was at net zero. After a while, I started doing it weekly, and then if you're responsible with your money, you can just pay off the credit card every month, and that's what I recommend. Don't go into debt doing all this stuff. Okay? So you also learned how to find the points and miles you need for that big adventure, right? So anybody let me know in the chat if you're not clear on that. And maybe you're here today because you want to travel more without going broke, obviously. That's my big thing, being self-employed. Maybe you want to go on that big bucket list trip like New Zealand. And maybe you redeemed points before, but you're ready to level up like my parents are. My parents are ready to go first class. That's what they want to do next year for their 50th wedding anniversary. So if that's you, then this is your time. This is it. Let's do it. Let's do it together. It's time to experience the rest of the world, or maybe just be able to go visit your friends around the country or your grandkids or whoever. It's your time to plan that big trip. Like I put off Africa for 20-something years, probably 30 years. But now I've been able to go back, plus all these other trips. And it's time to let go of your excuses right here and right now. Like the flights are too long, they're too expensive, I have a family of 4, how do I get flights for all 4 of us? All those excuses, we're done with those. Now it's time for proven step-by-step system on exactly how to learn this wacky world of reward points and go on that big trip. If I can do it, you can do it, because my spending is actually a lot less than most people's, being self-employed and also single. So I want to introduce you to real quickly to this course that I have called Free Flight Fundamentals. It's an online course where we make that dream trip a reality. So I want to introduce you to Chris. He's a wedding photographer in the next town over. He's amazing, and he earned enough points and miles to take his whole family of four to Aruba, paid for the entire trip, points and no miles. I'm impressed that he was able to do it on spring break because his wife is a teacher. Spring break is not easy, actually, but he used it just his regular business spending. I don't even think he used personal spending for that trip. So in the course, what you're going to get is it's a start to finish course of setting your goal, where do you want to go, who flies there, all the things we went through, plus redemption, plus extra earning ways. There's all these sneaky ways to earn more points and miles. You're also going to get, if you sign up for this course by the end of Sunday night, this big promotional weekend, you're going to get a cheap flight resource guide, which has all kinds of stuff in it that has nothing to do with points and miles, like train travel, rental cars, house sitting, all kinds of stuff. I've done all this research and like Facebook groups to be in that to answer any question. But most importantly, you're going to get these 3 worksheets that I've made. How to track your monthly budget, which ones will take a credit card, and also a worksheet for your points and miles, like when you sign up for a new credit card, when do you get the bonus, did you get the bonus, how much is that bonus, all that stuff. You can track everything. And then the third sheet is just a sheet for your new reward points numbers so that they're easy access. And then, most importantly, I'm going to do a one-on-one coaching session with each of you to get you started with the right strategy for you, because everybody's situation is different. So inside the free flight fundamentals, you can definitely earn at least one free flight. And the beauty of this program is that once you've learned how to do it, you literally can repeat it over and over and over again if you want to. You're going to learn my step-by-step system to planning that dream trip, and how travel hacking using credit cards is going to help you with that, and where to start getting the information from. And then also you're just going to learn how to pick your airline and travel card for that first flight. So module 1, I just want to give you a quick, I'm going to go real quickly through this, what's inside. Module 1 is what is travel hacking, all the terminology, some of the stuff we talked about before. I give you case studies of different people, like a full example of that New Zealand trip, which, you know what, I'm going to get back to that because I said I was going to talk about it. Melissa, I know I got to talk about the New Zealand, so don't let me forget. So module 1 is just like how to, strategies for staying financially responsible while you dip your toe in, myth busting and facts like about credit scores and stuff like that. And like I said, case studies. And then module 2 is exactly how to get started, my step-by-step checklist, picking your destination, your flight research. It's basically homework. So you can just like, you can whittle away at these each week as you have time while you want to plan your trip, and finding that perfect credit card for your trip. Module 3 is, this is a fun module. This is the ins and outs of earning faster. So for example, I have here, I shopped online through Eddie Bauer and I got 130 bonus points. 130 is not a lot, but when you add it up, it goes crazy. And then here's another example of 250 bonus awards for something I'm already doing anyway. What I did there was I bought an iTunes gift card for $100, which I paid for, and I got 250 bonus United miles by doing that. And then what I did is I put the iTunes gift card preloaded into iTunes and Netflix, or is it Hulu? Hulu automatically bills that iTunes gift card. So I'm already was going to pay for Hulu anyway. There's a tip. So all these different ways to get extra secret trip tips that have nothing to do with opening new credit cards. Okay, so that's a really fun module. All right, so here's another example. So this was another example of, and this is module 4, is different redemptions and how you can play around, ways to get around paying for the taxes even. So if you want a legit free flight, there's different ways to do it. So here's an example of a $300 flight that was free thanks to 24,000 points. I paid no taxes or fees on that. So we're going to get into that in module 4. And so, like I said, you're going to get these also. You're going to get the Ultimate Travel Resource ebook, which is like all these other resources. Anything, any question you could ever have for your specific situation is there. Even RV stuff, like if you wanted to RV around Iceland or whatever. Video strategy session with me. You're going to get one call with me where I get you started, and 3 tracking worksheets, which people have been testing those out and they love them. So here we go. So you'll see underneath the video, if you're watching this online, if you're watching it on YouTube, you just want to go to the replay page or the live page to see this. But basically, you just click that button below and you get the course with all the bonuses, and you're getting this early bird pre-sale pricing. So I'm still finishing the redemption portion of the course, so it's in pre-sale right now. Eventually, this course is going to be the price of an actual international flight, like closer to $700 when it's finished. So you're getting it at this bargain basement price. Right now, it's $200 off, and you get these bonuses, which are only for people watching this webinar. So if you're ready to be able to travel anywhere at any time with all the points and miles you'll ever need, then I want you to just keep you going on this. Like, so first of all, I spent like all these years learning how to do this stuff, and I've distilled it down into what I've cut out all the filler of what you don't really need to know. And this strategy I spent 2 years. It was a part-time job learning how to do all this stuff. So let's say it was a $10 an hour job. That's saving you all that time, $2,400 with time. And then also it's repeatable. So now I've not had to pay for international flights again. So imagine how many flights you pay for, even domestically, if you want it. I don't think domestic's a great redemption, but if you want to, knock yourself out, especially if you have a family of 4. But anyway, so it's repeatable. You don't really need to pay for flights or hotels ever again after you've learned how to do this. Literally, you learn how to do it and you just keep going. And then the really cool thing is learning how to get airport lounge access. So imagine getting like free food, free Wi-Fi, and even showers in airport lounges around the world. I have one of my credit cards that I use for everything. It gives me that, and I'm addicted. I was able to take a shower coming back from Africa in Madrid when my flight was canceled, or when my flight was delayed. It was amazing. So imagine that. So the total value of all those things is over $4,000, and I'm giving it to you all, including the coaching from me, which is amazing. You're getting all of that for just this low introductory price because it's for pre-sale. So if you click on that button, it just brings you to the screens to like check out, and then you get to start the course immediately because I already have content in there. By the time you're done with that content, I will have finished the redemption portion. So, and if you get stuck and you're trying to redeem quicker, I'll help you because you get that one-on-one with me. So before liftoff, I want to share with you again this bonus of doing it with me. This is definitely a limited time option because I can't do this for everyone that's ever going to buy my course. But for now, I want to hear where you are, what cards do you already have, and I'm going to help you either get your first travel card that works for you, or your first airline, or your first hotel card, whatever you think you need. I'm going to help you get started and keep you focused on your goal. Or maybe you just get stuck trying to plan your trip. If you want me to, I'll do that too. Okay, so just a reminder, this is what's in the course. It's a resource, the 3 spreadsheets that you're going to need going through this to make sure you stay on track with your bills and all that jazz. And most importantly, that cheap flight resource list also. Okay, cool. So real quick, I'm just going to let you know some more case studies. It's time for you to figure this out all and make it work for you. So again, here's my dad's trip to Scotland. Okay, Melissa, I'll talk to you later. I wanted to talk to you about that New Zealand one, but I'll have to share it with you later. So here's an example of my parents. So they used their regular spending, and they finally went to Wales. And we went to Wales for my great aunt's birthday. So that was my mom's and my part of the trip. And then we let my dad take his big golf trip for the rest of it. So we did a weekend in Ireland. We drove up England, up to Scotland, drove all around Scotland. My dad was able to golf at all his dream golf locations. And I was able to go because I had points and miles, and I helped them go. Like I said, they were in economy. I was in first class, but still, they still got to go. It was amazing. I actually used cash back on this trip to pay off everything I paid on the trip. It's not a good redemption, but for me in that situation, it's what I wanted to do. And then we talked about James and Laura already and how they use their wedding spending to get their honeymoon, which to me is like bonkers. Like everyone should be doing that. Nobody should be paying for honeymoons because that's a perfect example of like a spending spree that you can go crazy with, especially with me. Like pay for my fee as a photographer and you can get a free flight just from that. So again, I just want to recap what's in it and how you click that button, that big red button below the video, and you can buy this course. It ends Sunday night. And I want to talk about Christina. So Christina's a friend of mine. She is like a master at just paying for cash for things, paying for things as she has the money. She was taught very, very well financially how to save first and all that stuff. So she has fought me tooth and nail on travel hacking. But because she's been the recipient of trips with me when I've gone and paid for points and miles, now she's finally listening. So she finally booked a flight to Vegas for $84, I think it was, $85. This is us in Mexico. And here's me. I took her with just one sign-up bonus on Southwest credit card. I took two of us to Costa Rica for her birthday. And that's us drinking a coconut in the car. So that's just one sign-up bonus. We got two flights for that one sign-up bonus. So it can be done. And I definitely want you to take advantage, learn how to do this, and absolutely take advantage of the fact that you're getting coaching from me because you're a beta tester of my course. I'm super excited about this. Let me know. I'm going to check in the chat now. Let me know what questions you have. So, okay, Mari says, I want to, discuss with, yes, absolutely. Yeah, get a Chase Sapphire for sure, but let me talk, if you buy, here's the thing, Mari, if you buy with that Chase Sapphire, there's two Chase Sapphires. One is better than the other, and if you have a husband, I definitely have an opinion on that. So getting that free coaching call from me is going to clarify that for you. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's so, you can go crazy if you have a husband. And you absolutely have time to talk to him. So all those bonuses are good for anyone who buys from now till Sunday. Feel free to share this with your friends and family. This webinar will be live until Sunday at midnight also. So you can rewatch this whole presentation again. And if you buy while we're live, I'll give you a copy of this presentation to keep also. How's that? Cool. Okay, so somebody's asking me, how many cards do you have in total and what are you paying in annual fees? Ooh, that is an awesome question. So the short answer is I have a lot of cards. The longer answer is that you can cancel these cards. Most of the time you can cancel them and get another bonus in a couple years. So those are the short answers. You don't have to keep all these cards forever. It is better for your credit if you have open credit that you're not using. So having more cards open that you're not actually using is actually good for your credit. But I agree, if you're using those cards, or if you're not using the card and it has a $95 annual fee, for example, it might not be worth keeping. The only time those cards are worth keeping is if it's like an airline card, because then you get free check bags, you get priority boarding. There's perks to having the airline branded credit card. So usually I'll keep one of those for the business or the personal, and I'll cancel the other one. But the really cool thing is, like with that Southwest card that I took Christina to Costa Rica for her birthday, I canceled that card right after that trip. And then literally I just got another, because that was 2 years ago, and now I've already gotten another Southwest card. So there's pros and cons to doing it, and you definitely want to think about that for yourself. For me, if my total annual fees are less than the flight price of one international flight, I still think it's worth it for me to keep some of them open. But that's part of the reason I made those spreadsheets, is actually that's one of the things in one of the tracking documents, is what are you paying total for annual fees? That is a good question. When we get into those Chase cards, it's definitely a different conversation, because the perks outweigh the annual fee so fast. But that's the kind of stuff that's in the course, actually, is I go through annual fees specifically and how to know whether you should be paying it or not. That is an awesome question. Okay, cool. So who else has a question for me? I see Kathy's still here. Oh, good. Kathy's back. Melissa left. Awesome. Oh, so good to see you, Melissa. I want to talk about that New Zealand thing, but it's definitely the New Zealand trip for my brother. He's going from JFK to New Zealand and Australia for his 30th birthday present to himself, and I've helped him plan that. He's doing that in November of this year. That is a case study that's in my course. And then also my sister and her fiance right now are in Hawaii, and I help them with their trip. And that they're there right now. We're using points and miles, and I gave them an extra tip that has nothing to do with credit cards, because my sister will not listen to me. She does not want any more credit cards because she knows herself and she knows she can't be trusted. And that's fine. There's other non-credit card ways to travel hack. So I help them do their Hawaii trip, and they're there right now. So that's another case study that's in this course. So it's not just about credit cards. Once you get the basic ones, you can decide for yourself whether you want more. But the fastest way to get them is these sign-up bonuses and knowing the rules there. Okay, so I just want to see if anybody else has questions in the chat. Cool. That is such a good question about that. Travel cards, I'm so glad that you didn't know that they were there. Awesome. Okay, cool. So if you have any questions, I'm going to wrap up because it's probably been an hour. Yep, it's been exactly an hour, which I talk fast. If you want to see any slides again, just chime in real quick. Kathy, I'm so glad to hear that the YouTube worked great. YouTube Live. Anybody else? Last call? But feel free to DM me again on Instagram. It's a Parallax Life or McKay's Photo on Instagram. If you have any questions about this, you can also email me. But this is the time to buy, man. This is the time to get a sign up bonus. You have plenty of time right now to, if you buy this course, literally, you're gonna save that much money just in a sign up bonus. Like generally speaking, especially if you're talking about one of those sapphires, those are usually huge. Those are usually worth $600 to $800 cash back, and you could literally use it to pay me off, like pay off this $297. It's a pretty good deal, and the time is now because you have plenty of time to get a new card before the Black Friday Cyber Monday spending that you know you're going to do, whether you want to or not. We all go crazy, especially with business stuff, you know, prepay for software. I think last year I paid for software for the year because they give you discounts instead of paying monthly. There's all kinds of things like that it's just regular spending you're going to be doing anyway. But if you put it on a new card, you get all these perks for your business and for your life. So you can pay for trips. All right, awesome. I don't see any new. Oh, good. Yeah, Kathy, I'm glad that I explained that. It's not just credit card specific. A lot of it actually is once you have the cards, then what? Then how do you get more points? Like United and Delta, I've gone down the rabbit hole of like all these really cool ways that you can get extra points through those places. Yeah, the Chase Sapphire. That is a module in the course on the difference between the two. But quickly, I'll give you an example. So there's two Chase Sapphire cards. Either one is great, and there's strategies and perks and pros and cons of getting one over the other. If you have a partner, that's easier because I'd have one of you get one and the other one get the other one and refer the other person to it, blah, blah, blah. But basically, the one I have, I started with the regular Chase Sapphire. And that one's a lower annual fee, but it has less perks. It's still an amazing card. That's a really good general travel card. But I have the Chase Sapphire Reserve, and that one comes with the airport lounge access. It comes with better trip protection, better rental car collision coverage when I rent a car in Costa Rica, for example. It comes with an automatic $300 travel rebate every year, like literally parking, Airbnb, anything. Like as soon as I spend it, it credits my account up to $300 a year. So to me, that one is like the best one to get. But if you have a spouse, both of you don't need that card because you can get. Actually, here's a good thing. Yet again, with my parents on that trip, I'm going to yell at them again, is because I have airport lounge access, when we went to Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and England, we did a lot of little flights around, and I got them into all the airport lounges. They were able to come in there with me. So that's why only one of you needs that Chase Sapphire Reserve. But that's a quick answer to the Chase Sapphire line. I definitely have links for those cards for referral links. So absolutely, if you're ready and you know which one you want already, let me know and I'll get you a referral link to that. Cool. So Kathy, reach out to me and I will share that with you. Anybody else, let me know. I'm going to wrap this up now and I'm super excited about this. Please let me know if you have any questions. I know that there's a couple photographers watching, and if you are looking for content for your newsletter, Sue, this is something that all engaged people should know about. And I'm happy to like switch up James and Laura's story or something. But basically, if you want to send this webinar out and share it with your clients in your newsletter, I would love it. If you want me to give this to your audience, I would love it, because I can't believe that all these honeymoons that my couple spend $5,000 to $7,000 on when they don't need to. They could get cash back, points and miles for all that wedding spending. Cool. All right, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you. High five, Kathy, and the rest of you who watched to the end. I really appreciate your support. And I'm excited. I hope you learned something new with or without my course.